What does it take to scale, acquire, and exit a business like a pro? Today, we're talking with Beki Darlin, a powerhouse in business growth, acquisitions, and strategy. She's helping small business owners think like investors, and we're going to dive in deep to how she does it. Welcome to True Experts Podcast, where we uncover the strategies, insights, and marketing moves that drive success. I'm your host, Justin True, and today we're joined by a guest who knows exactly how to build, buy, and scale businesses like a pro. Welcome, Beki. I have a hefty introduction here for Beki because there's a lot to it, and like always, I can't always remember this. So here we go. Beki and I met a few years ago, and since then, she's been a huge advocate for what I do and helping me stay focused in my mission and pushing me towards growth. Over the years, I've gotten to know her well, and I truly appreciate having her in my corner. Beyond our personal relationship, Beki's expertise speaks for itself. She's the founder of Our WAEE, SMB Simplified, and Biggest D Creative, leading the change in helping small businesses scale, transition, and exit profitably. She's on a mission to empower women in M&A, break down barriers, and show business owners how to unlock real sustainable growth. As a certified hypnotherapist, she's mastered the art of mindset, influence, and high-stakes decision-making, which, as any CEO knows, is half the battle in leading a successful business. Today, we're going to dive into her journey, her game-changing strategies, and why small business owners need to think like investors, whether they're buying, growing, or exiting. Plus, she's got bold insights on why creativity and disruption are essential in today's market. So let's get into it.
Well, welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Like I said, we've known each other for a while, so I know all about the ins and outs, who you are, how you got here, but most people listening probably don't. So give us a rundown of who you are and how you got here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm awesome. I feel like that's the fundamental thing that needs to be said here. But my journey professionally started actually in the legal field. I was in the legal field for about 10 years, where I worked my way up from a temporary a temporary receptionist, like admin assistant, to a six-figure paralegal within just a couple of years, working for some of the biggest names in the business, like Kawasaki, Allergan, Visa, Baker McKenzie, Littler Mendelson. And I was planning on going into law school, but at the time I was married and we had a very mobile lifestyle that required us to move because my ex was active duty military. And so the law just wasn't for me. So I got into marketing and then worked my way up from just learning, direct response marketing into being a fractional CMO, fractional CRO. And as I was doing that, I saw an opportunity for, if I'm helping the business grow anyway, a lot of this stuff really translates into value growth acceleration and exit planning in the M&A space. And so that kind of brought me into the M&A space, where I found that women were really under-supported and felt oftentimes that they were alone on their journey, and they weren't. It was just very fragmented. They had little pockets, but they didn't know that anybody else existed. So I kind of was able to use some of my skills as a connector to start aggregating all of those together and creating a central resource where women can get the community, the support, and access to capital that they need. And that's where I'm at right now.
It's been fun. It's been entertaining. It's been fascinating from my perspective. I definitely wouldn't say I was there when your idea for Our WAEE happened, but I wasn't there in that exact moment, but I feel like I was there very shortly after when you were like, check out this landing. And now, I don't know, what is it? Has it been like a year that it's been in development?
It's been about 18 months. Yeah.
18 months. And now it's live and launched and moving. So I know that Our WAEE is one of the things you focus on, but what are the three things takes up most of your time right now?
Honestly, I've kind of shifted everything. So Our WAEE is kind of the foundation, but I was focusing on the concept of building a flywheel. I hate doing stuff that doesn't make an impact in some way. And so I I wanted all of the things that I'm pursuing to feed into other things that I'm pursuing. And actually, kind of where the birth of Our WAEE came from on the back end was, I remember you and I had a conversation, or we were in a group where they were talking about build your pond. And if you can monetize that pond, even better. And I just saw an opportunity of like, well, I could build a pond that I could monetize in several different ways if I have the community here, but I also do value acceleration and exit planning over here. And then I'm also building my own portfolio. And so those are kind of the three things. Is I'm building my own portfolio of minority equity shares in helping sellers who wouldn't otherwise be able to sell their business figure out what they need to do to get it to be a sellable asset, because just because you build it doesn't mean you can sell it. And that's going to be a huge problem in the coming years when people are looking to retire and find out, I've spent 20, 30 years working towards retirement and I can't because I don't have a sellable asset. And so that for me was like a big point, but also we have this new generation coming in of, I want to buy a business rather than do the 0 to 1 of starting up a business. I want to take over an established business that has that product market fit. It has the customer base. It has the cash flow. But how do I scale it? Because when you acquire, the change management and the integration problems mean that there's usually a post-acquisition dip in revenue that you as the new owner have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to get back into the black and get back into that profitable cash flow so you can actually grow the business. And so a lot of the skills that we use in being a chief marketing officer, or chief revenue officer are very applicable to that. So kind of that, like, it's three parts of a triangle of what I'm doing right now, and they all feed into each other. So it becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem.
Do you feel that as you move throughout your day and your week and your months, that when you shift your gears to what you're going to work on, Our WAEE, the creative side, the simplified side, is it a clear black and white shift, or are they all like melted and molded together in a way that you're just operating and every asset of your business is benefiting?
I would argue that they're very clearly delineated. I think anybody coming in from the outside would be like, what is going on here? But for me, it's, if you look at like the customer journey or the life cycle of how business operates, what I've done is I'm addressing audiences at different points in that cycle with different offers. So they're all in the acquisition space, but we've got the business owners that are looking to exit that I'm helping optimize for exit. Then I've got the pool of buyers that are looking to buy businesses that I can say, hey, now as you're looking to exit with SMB Simplified, I have all of these buyers in Our WAEE, let's connect you. And then as the buyers in Our WAEE take over the businesses, then I can go through SMB Simplified, or with my holding company, Biggest D Creative, I can partner with them as a minority equity partner to help navigate that change after acquisition. So it winds up being this like nice little bubble that we have the seller exiting, introduce them to a buyer, I help the buyer, and then when the buyer is ready to exit, then they become the seller, then we rinse and repeat that cycle.
So they're clearly delineated in terms of what, paper and stuff? Like when you're operating day to day and you're doing 100 things, do you have how do you do this much stuff? Like, do you have walls that say I'm now shifting into this different gear?
So a big part of that was actually incorporating peak performance principles and flow states into how I operate in time blocking and doing deep work on one piece of the puzzle. So for example, on Mondays, maybe I'll do deep work on Our WAEE, and then in the afternoon, I'll take calls for SMB Simplified. And then kind of Biggest D Creative is kind of in the background of all of it because it's just a holding company. So it's not necessarily something that I need to go out and actively do a lot on. It just kind of is part of that. So there's really just the two pieces of, is it something for the community of buyers that I'm helping, or is it something for sellers? And so just, are we sourcing deals? Okay, well then that's maybe for our way. Are we, doing valuations and looking at where we need to adjust? Do we need to launch a new product? Do we need to eliminate a couple of products? Like, are they spread a little bit too thin and maybe they need to narrow their focus? That comes back under the SMB Simplified, because at the end of the day, most businesses fail because they try to make it too complex. They try, as they grow, especially past that like 1 to 3 million annual revenue point, they just get too complicated and complex, and that winds up, they have to put in all these checks and balances. And if we just dial that back and get the CEO out of that chief everything officer mode and into a true CEO role, which a lot of is mindset shift, which is where the being a certified hypnotherapist comes in handy, is just shifting that mindset of, I don't have to do all of the things. I have to create the systems and hire the right people to get these things done. And then I have to direct the vision. And so kind of the concept of SMB Simplified is, how can we get the objective that I want in the simplest way possible, because that streamlines the entire process and usually leads to a better company culture as well.
Totally. How often do you get to hypnotize your clients?
All the time. Here's the deal. So people are going to hear hypnotherapy and are like, what voodoo are you doing on people? Are you just brainwashing them? And I'm kind of, I'm washing their brain, because a lot of times they have default programming that they don't realize is what really the obstacle is. And so a lot of what I use is actually conversational hypnosis. And that is just using language in a way that allows them to access what those belief systems are in order to reframe them. It's not controlling their actions. It's giving them more autonomy over what is actually running their belief systems and how that plays out in their behaviors, because a lot of times they just can't see it. If they say, look, we've tried to solve this problem for a couple of years and all the experts that come in can't do it, and it doesn't matter how much money we throw at the problem, it's still a problem. Well, usually the problem is how you're thinking about the problem. So Let's take that back a little bit. Let me ask you a few questions. And that's one of the most powerful tools in any like psychologist or hypnotherapist or coach or consultant's toolbox, is asking the right questions that allows the person that you're working with to have autonomy over finding the solution that works best for them. And I up front let them know, listen, I'm going to be using language in a very specific way. You need to agree to that's part of the work that we're doing together. And the other part is, sometimes we do need to do actual hypnotic sessions. Like, we do need to go through the whole relaxation and get them into a hypnotic state to allow them to let go of control long enough to make the changes that they need to do to actually be the leader that they want to be.
Totally. You sort of answered my next question, but have you ever done this? Have you ever done this to me without my consent in all of the conversations we've had?
Not without consent. No.
Because I will say, I don't even know if you know this, but there's been a handful of times that we've spoke where we get off the call and I'm like frustrated to hell with like what we just talked about, and maybe you knew that from my body language or how I was talking, but it usually will take me a couple hours to kind of decompress, and then it usually ends up taking like a week for me to like work through it, and then I usually end up talking to other people of like, all right, like here's what she, not even like here's what you said, or you're just like, here's the problem I'm having, and then I know that there's been like I think at least two times where I've blatantly come back and said, like, here's the 1,000 pounds you dropped on me, and here's me lifting it. Look what I can do.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot more of that's happened in our conversation has to do with the fact that I'm neurodivergent and I see patterns differently than other people. And then I'm not afraid to call a spade, but like gently. I hope that you've perceived it. Sometimes it's not so gentle. Sometimes it's just like we've been talking about this for several weeks, but you're not making the change that would actually impact it. So is that a thing you're going to do or not? Right? Because it's a lot, and I get that too, of like people coming back at me and I'm just like, I know that it's easy for you to see this, but like you didn't have to come for me personally and be all the time. But it's not. It's. I feel like when people actually care about you and your progress, they're willing to be transparent about the things that they see that are repeating patterns that are not helpful. Or when you're, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like when you're undervaluing yourself, or when you're staying in a situation that maybe isn't the best overall for everybody, and just saying, I understand that you're an adult and you can make adult decisions and do whatever you want to do, but I don't think it's good for you, friend. Like, I think you deserve better. And that, I think, is a separate conversation of how to be transparent and to be honest with somebody, rather than like reframing a belief system around worthiness or ability to charge or anything like that.
Totally. One, I know you, so I know, obviously, as we're kind of dissecting right now, the depths that you go to, and you just talked to us about your different businesses, and there's a lot of process in there, right? There's a lot of mechanisms and processes and pieces, but really at the end of the day, it's all about people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume you enjoy talking to people, but why do you enjoy working with people so much?
So I'm gonna qualify that and say, with the right kind of people, I absolutely enjoy working with it. And I think that that's a skill that you have to develop too, of who are my right people versus who would be better served by someone else. So not looking at them as like, oh, these are awful, but I'm just not the person for this. Like, it's just not going to be good for either of us to continue this. And as I have been more, I understand, I'm very aware that what I do is unconventional. I understand that I have a very disruptive kind of way of doing things, because when I step into things, people have been operating a certain way for a long time, and it has worked up to that point. But the whole point is they've hit a transition point and it's no longer working. So they need somebody to come in and be a little bit disruptive, be a little bit innovative to find a solution that works for them moving forward to where they want to go. And so when I connect with people that have a big vision, but they're just frustrated, like they know they can get from where they are to where they're going, but they have no idea what steps they need to do now, because a lot of times they have 11 billion different options. And there's just one that they can make. And it's, how do I know that the one that I choose is the one that's right? And that comes back to like lack of self-trust. Do you trust yourself enough to make a decision that even if it's wrong, you can recover from it and continue on your path and still make progress towards your goal? When I have those kinds of conversations with people that are more growth-minded, they have big visions. I love people that want to do things that everybody else is telling them, like, it's not a thing. Like, you're crazy. I get told I'm crazy all the time. Even I think in the initial conversations that we had, you're like, you are doing so much. What are you doing? And I'm like, no, it makes sense to me though. Like, it doesn't, I know that was one of the frustrations that I kind of had in some of our conversations in the early days of talking about Our WAEE, because it was such a big shift of where I had been focused previously, that I feel like some of your feedback at that time was like, what are you doing, friend? Like, where is this going? It seems like this is a distraction rather than something that's beneficial. But when people can see a bigger vision that they can't quite articulate, having somebody like me to come in and kind of pick it apart and then be like, well, what if we did this? Those conversations really light me up, because people are extraordinary when they believe in themselves enough to actually do a thing that they're really scared to do.
Totally. I want to talk about Our WAEE, but before we do you think that people, when you're working with people, do they know the path of where they need to go, but they're withholding themselves? Or do people more often not know how to move forward, and that's what you're helping them figure out, or you're telling them? Do people have the answer within themselves?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. One part of it is, I have to speak from the position of women, because this is the area that I'm primarily in. That's my own experience. Is, from a very young age, we're told what is acceptable behavior. As part of a society, what is, you're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to, work and start a family, or whatever the expectations of your society or your particular culture are that you have coming down from the elders or the authority figures. Doesn't always align with what you want for your life. So while there may be a belief that, like, I was meant for more, or I was meant to do something else, a lot of us when we're younger tend to do what we're told to do, because in some way we trust that our elders know better because they've been there before, until we get old enough and we've done it their way enough and we're like, I'm not happy. This is not what I need to be doing. And I found that kind of as people get into their mid to late 30s and beyond, they start to shift into this, I want to live my life on my terms and see what's actually possible for me. I might fail spectacularly, but I know that doing what is expected of me or what I feel obligated to do is no longer working for me. And so that in and of itself is a transition point from what's expected or what people think I should be doing into what do I actually want to be doing, and can I do, and then the next step of that is, well, what if what I really want to do is audacious and nobody believes that I can do it, and I don't even know if I can do it, but I cannot get rid of the feeling that I was meant for more, that I could do more, that I was brought here to do something that has a lasting impact on people. I don't exactly know what that looks like, but I know that I'm good at this, and I know that I would love to do this, and I know that this is kind of the outcome that I would want. And that's where that's my zone of genius is, okay, give me those factors. Let's find the way. If you want to get here and you want to do it this way, and these are your values, let's reverse engineer this and figure out how you can get it done. And then as they start doing it, you get data, and then you tweak and you optimize. But always checking in that we're trying to get to that goal. And I think it's a matter of, a lot of times they either have a belief that they're not even allowed to think that big, or once they think that big, if they can't see every single step along the journey, then they can't even take the first step. And I'm very much of the, let's take a step and get the data and see what it says, reassess, and continue on. And sometimes just having somebody in your corner that tells you that it's okay for you to give yourself permission to think that big, or that you're not crazy for wanting to do this big audacious thing, or that changing your career trajectory completely is not insane, but like, tell me how you're going to do it, or like, talk me through it. Tell me, okay, is that really what you want? Or are you still kind of just playing in the realms of what you think you should, or what you're allowed to have? And kind of expanding that potential into, if you actually want a thing and you believe in it and you know that you are suited for it, there is a way to get that done. It's kind of like in marketing. If you have an idea for a business, there's an audience for it. Well, we just got to find who they are and find the right messaging. So it's kind of a parallel to that.
I love that story leading up to you saying our way. I'd never heard of like that backup there of their way, other people's ways. Yeah, I never heard that. That was cool. So let's dive in what it is, why, lots of our way, but start with what was that moment when our way was conceived in your mind? What was that moment and that realization of there's light and I need to go towards this?
I think it was a lot of small things along the way, but when it kind of finally added up to, hey, this is something that maybe I should look into, and then I came up with the acronym for it, was somebody on Twitter, back when it was called Twitter, asked the question, why aren't there more women in acquisition, in entrepreneurship through acquisition? And it was a little bit of cognitive dissonance for me, because my exposure just in kind of exploring the world of ETA was that there were quite a few women, but they weren't getting the exposure that their male counterparts were getting, or they weren't as well known, or they were, for this specialty, and only if you didn't go in that specialty. So I just was like, you know what? Women by nature are collaborative. That's just how we work best. We can work independently, but when real magic happens is when women collaborate on things and they take more of a village mentality and they share resources and they give feedback, and that helps the collective kind of rise higher. And the reason that I wanted to call it Our Way was because there's a lot of, entrepreneurship through acquisition in general is still kind of in its Wild West stages, where the Stanford search fund, traditional search fund model kind of branched out into the self-funded search fund model. And now it's continuing to grow, and there's all these other different ways that you can get into it, so that it's not, nobody really knows what they're doing. And that was kind of a pattern recognition that I saw during my research but the way that people are telling you, or all the training that's out there, is very from a male perspective for a male audience. And that's just a different way of doing business. It's not, neither one is right or wrong. It's just a different way of doing business and the way that women do business. So what you saw is a lot of incredibly educated, very ambitious, overqualified women trying to pursue this, but being the only one. And there are other considerations that aren't addressed in some of the trainings that need to be. And so I was like, we could try to do it their way and operate almost not really in competition, but kind of if you're trying to go into somebody else's natural mode of operation, and that's not your natural mode of operation, you're already at a disadvantage for going after deals and doing business like that. So what if we just changed the game a little bit and played it by our rules and leaned into what makes women really good at acquiring and running businesses, and had the support there that allowed them to get the community, the support, and the capital that they needed to actually get deals done. It wasn't that they're any less capable. In fact, Wells Fargo just had a report that came out in 2023 of the state of women in business that said that women-led companies grow 4.5 times faster than male-led companies. They tend to have a 3 times more hiring of employees, so they create 3 times more jobs. They tend to be, there's other reports that say that they're more successful post-acquisition, because it's not just about acquiring the business, but actually handling the change management and the integration afterwards. The research is showing that women are really, really good in this arena, but there wasn't anything that was built for them to be really, really good in this arena. And honestly, I kind of looked at Chief.com's model. So Chief came out and it was really supportive of women in leadership roles in the C-suite or executive leadership. And I was like, we need something like that, but for women who are buying and operating their own companies and getting into more of the investing in, minority equity stakes and things like that.
So can you define what is Our WAEE today? What is it?
Yeah.
And what does it do?
So this is a fun, I'm kind of smiling a little bit because that was one of the questions that we kept getting. What are you? Are you an accelerator? Are you an incubator? Are you a fund? And what it boils down to is actually in the name. So Our WAEE stands for Our Women's Acquisition Entrepreneurship Ecosystem. It's kind of mirrored on the way that I built my own businesses, where it isn't any one thing. So a lot of the training in the space solves one problem out of it's one step out of a 10-step process. You still have to solve the other 9 steps, but you have to go find all these independent places to get it done. What we've done in Our WAEE is we look at the journey holistically, and we have support for all of the 10 steps in one place. So as you can come in at any point in the journey, get the support that you need, and grow along with the same community. So you don't have to, I want to acquire the company, I have to go with this mastermind A that only handles acquisition. But now I've acquired a company, what do I do with the change management? I don't know. I have to go find a coach. Do I find a coach? Do I find another mastermind? And it just eliminates that process because most business owners in general tend to be part of peer groups. They tend to be part of executive coaching programs. They tend to be part of networking. They tend to, participate in fundraising of some sort, and then some sort of continuing education. So what we did is we just designed all of that specifically by women for women in the acquisition space. Do we cover everything that there could be to know? No, but we're growing. And a big part of what we've been doing as we've been growing is, I told you earlier, it's been 18 months in this journey and we just launched. That's because for the first 12 months, I did deep dive research by just talking to people who were searching, just talking to women who were searching and women who were involved in the ecosystem, and finding out what the real problems were versus what I assumed they were. And then I created a solution that addressed those problems. And I think that that's something that can apply to businesses in general. Is a lot of times you have an idea for a business, but you want it to be according to your vision. And sometimes that makes you lose sight of the people that you're actually serving. So if you keep it customer centric, if you keep it as high value for the people that you're serving as possible, it becomes this thing that almost grows without needing a lot of input from you. You just guide it along what is most useful, and realizing too that it's not just I always didn't want it to be my direct effort. There's a lot of models out there that are very guru-led models, and I get them, but those tend to be publishing companies, not actually helpful for, they're more focused on the profit behind it versus helping the people that are in it. And I'm sure that you've been in some of those courses too, where you've been burned. They made this big promise, but I got burned by it. What would have actually been helpful for me is if they knew of a resource that I need and they helped connect me to it, rather than say that unless I needed their services, I couldn't be part of their community. So really what it is an ecosystem of anything that you need to be successful in this realm. We have a partner or a provider or a resource, or somebody knows somebody. So it's really the network, but also the education, also the accountability, also deal flow and capital. So it's kind of like our own little utopia. I'm a little biased, but I think it's
right. How's it going?
It's going really, really well. We've had a lot of, like we said, we're just launching it, but the traction, we've actually seen the attendance double on the calls just in the past week. I hadn't previously been doing really any marketing for it. And we just sent our first newsletter and above 80% open rate, like 40 something click-through rate. Like it's a highly niched audience, which means that they're very responsive because they've been looking for something like this. And the number of deals that have gotten done just from informally doing the market research, I've seen that women in our community have shortened their deal flow time from, searching to close, instead of it taking the standard 12 to 24 months or 18 to 24 months, really, as a self-funded searcher, they're closing in 6 to 9 months. Just because they're getting access to the deal team that they need, or they're getting access to the information on deal structuring, or they get access to, hey, this deal wasn't right for me, but maybe it fits your investment thesis. That significantly shortens their time in search so that they can actually acquire and start running the business, which is the whole point.
You are a woman in the ETA space, right? And Our WAEE is for women in the ETA space. So like you're a candidate for your own collective, right?
Yeah.
So do you participate in this alongside the women that are in there, or are you driving and leading everything? I don't think you're doing the guru thing because you just said that. I also know you, but like, how is your participation with the membership, considering you run it, but you're also just like them?
Yeah. I think a big part of it is having the idea from the beginning that I don't want to be the guru in this. I like being a connector. I like helping people and pointing them to the resources that they need. But I also left my ego on the doorstep, where I don't need to be the one who solves all of their problems. My role is to help them find the people that solve their problems. And in that way, it also keeps me in the CEO role of being the visionary, not the day-to-day execution person. Because I'm also active in the ecosystem, though, it makes it easier for me to have conversations because I'm going through acquisitions myself. I have the same questions. I'm looking for the same resources. So it isn't me like I'm deploying all of my minions to come and do deals for me. But if you're actively doing deals, then creating a space where you're talking to other people who are actively doing deals makes sense. So I think a lot of it is just my mindset of this is a collective, this is a collaboration, informs how the community is being built and keeps me from becoming that like guru. I don't care about being the guru status. I have the capacity to lead and to educate, and so I'm happy to do that role. But the most empowering thing that I can do is help them understand their own greatness and let them give them what they need to go pursue it themselves. A lot of times, the biggest thing that women are encountering here is they have been in corporate roles where other people have taken credit for their ideas, or they've had to work through a lot of red tape. And this is not exclusive to women, but we do tend to see it quite a bit, where we have to work twice as hard to get half as much progress. And when they come into this world, it's a lot of people will show up on the calls and be like, hey, I just have a question. I'm sorry. I don't mean to take up a lot of time. And I'm like, no, take up time. In this space, it is not something to be ashamed of, to be ambitious, to be driven, to be really, really smart, and to be a subject matter expert on the industry that you've been in for 20 years. It makes sense that you then want to, you don't want to be part of somebody else's system. You want to go buy your own and explore what you could do if you had more autonomy over the process and over how the business was run, and you could create a culture that was really good for people. And so me being in that, having those same goals and those same values, I'm not ever asking them to do anything that I'm not asking myself to do. And I'm scared with some of this stuff. I'm frustrated by some of the terms that come back. I have, deals that bring up triggers that I need to work through and learn how to regulate my nervous system around. And I want to be reactive and tell some people to go fuck themselves. And you just can't do that all the time if you're trying to get a deal through. So I'm leading by example, but I'm not the only way that things can get done. Right? The whole point is they know themselves. Women know themselves. And if they've been looking into this, they've done a shit ton of research. They already know. They just need somebody to help point them in the right direction to get answers to a couple of outstanding questions. Because once they have enough information, there's no stopping them. They're incredible.
If you fast forward 10 years from now and the Our WAEE community is I guess just bigger, mm-hmm. Is your vision coming to life just because there's more women in the space, or is there a bigger impact that you can see because of what's going on? What is the signal that this is working? Is it because something that you can kind of tangibly see, or is it just because more women are participating?
This is a really great question. So I think that more women participating is part of the equation, but the end result, the end goal that I want to see is I actually want to see the economy impacted for the better. Because if we reverse engineer, if we want the economy to be better, not just nationally, but on a global scale, then we have to have businesses that are thriving and are places where people who want to be employees can thrive as well. The vision for each business has to be big enough to support the vision of the people inside it. And we've seen a shift, especially since 2019, 2020, to more of hybrid working situations. The driver for employee satisfaction is not always more money. It's a better, and I would call it work-life integration. It's not necessarily work-life balance, but it's doing work that they feel competent in, they feel well compensated for, and they feel like they're making a difference, even if on a small scale. And so the way that I see the vision is, since women are naturally collaborative, they are wired to preserve the community and to kind of look at it that way. If we can get women who care about the cultures of the companies that they're acquiring and do that on a massive scale, then we can shift away from business being so transactional and leaving people feel like all they are is a wallet or a credit card number. We can actually elevate the customer experience, elevate the employee experience, elevate the vendor experience. And if we do that by order of magnitude, then all of a sudden business is the better, the economy is better, quality of life goes up in general. I'm not so idealist that I think that there aren't going to be women who go in and create a toxic culture. People are people. It doesn't matter gender or nationality, culture, or whatever. You're going to, in any group of people, there will be some toxic people. That's just how it goes, right? But if the shift that we can kind of pursue is women are impact driven. So if we get women who are impact driven into positions where they own companies and can grow companies that are impact driven, that make a positive impact, en masse, then that's going to have a real effect on a bigger scale. And that's kind of the behind it. If I can have a small part in being a fire starter for that, in being a catalyst for people to go out and do great things, then that means that I fulfilled my purpose.
Totally. It sounds like the world could be maybe a more positive place.
A little bit, I think so, if you treat people like people who matter. But
100%.
part of that too, like, I don't want that to be construed as like, oh, let's be nice to everybody. I don't think it's by being nice to everybody. I think it's by learning how to regulate your nervous system and have healthy boundaries and have transparent conversations. And, there's a theme that people are shifting into authenticity. But what does authenticity mean? Authenticity is not always pretty.
Totally.
Authenticity is more along the lines of, what Carl Jung was talking about with integration. It's not erasing the negative traits of yourself or erasing the shadow side of yourself, but rather kind of calling a truce or understanding how that contributes to the whole picture of, there are some times when I'm going to come out and I'm going to be real aggressive about deals, and I'm not going to feel bad about it because I have learned that this is part of the process and we're just going to operate in this way. And if people don't like it, okay. Right? But getting back to a place where people are able to be comfortable with their flaws to the point of not necessarily like, oh, this is my flaw and I'm having an excuse for it, but saying, part of my nature is this. I don't necessarily love that about myself, but I'm not going to shun that side of myself either and create a bigger problem. This is how I'm going to have a healthy expression of that side of me. And so I think that shift is kind of the bigger underpinning of, in order to run better businesses, you have to become a better person that learns how to integrate and, regulate your own nervous system and manage your time and your energy.
Totally. Yeah. Authenticity doesn't inherently mean somebody's good. It
doesn't.
Somebody's just being themselves, and somebody might be a dick, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person. It just means that, I don't know what it means, but.
Well, and a lot of times, like, when people are acting that way, it's because there's some need that isn't being met, whether from themselves or from their environment. Maybe they're in the wrong line of work and they need to transition into doing something that's more aligned with their purpose. Like, there's explanation, and this is where it comes back to, like, I understand people very well. Like, the people aren't always just assholes. Some people have chosen to use whatever external reason, my father was mean to me, or I got bullied as a kid, or whatever. They've chosen to use that to justify them being assholes to other people. Problematic. But there are other people that have seen the potential for them to do that and say, yeah, I could go that way, but I choose something different. In the end, making the world a better place it comes down to individuals making better choices.
Totally. Yeah. And I think with the North Star of community and other people being a larger portion of those decisions and actions than just me, myself, and I think the more that people care about other people, it may take a lot of iterations and generations for that to pan out. But if more decisions were made with more people and positivity in the outlook, I think everything ends up being a better, more peaceful, positive, beneficial place.
Yeah.
we could have prosperity and profits and growth and success that don't necessarily just mean that, like, one person or a few people have more pennies than the other. When team sports, businesses, team sports, like those are very gratifying exercises for people. Like, I'm big. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Next, this has been super cool. I learned more about Our WAEE than I did before. This wasn't just a repeat of things I knew. Thank you for having this conversation here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, one, anybody listening, what's the best way to find you, learn more about you, learn more about Our WAEE and what you do?
If they want to find out about Our WAEE, just going to ourwaee.com, which is OURWAEE.com is going to be the best way. Otherwise, connecting with me on LinkedIn or through YouTube or X is going to be one of the best ways to get hold of me. I'm around. They can find me.
Yeah. I'm not on Twitter. But you are on Twitter, and I know that, and I'm not even on Twitter, but I know you're on Twitter. That's how much you're on Twitter. Is there, I don't know, if you don't have anything really cool, but is there any parting thought or sentiments that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about of making an individual better has a ripple effect on the larger communities that they're involved in and what they are interacting with. But I think that people don't understand the benefit of being selfish. Everybody's kind of inherently selfish anyway. That's just how human nature is. You have to look out for yourself in order to ensure your survival. So there's a degree of being selfish, but people aren't selfish in ways that help on a bigger scale. So being selfish in making time to make sure that your needs are adequately being met by yourself. Like, if you need to recharge after interacting with people, are you selfish enough to block off time to make sure you have time to recharge? That is such the self-care aspect of being an entrepreneur, especially being an owner operator or scaling on a larger scale, is you have to be able to manage yourself and your time and your energy. And that means that you have to build in rest periods. And we're kind of talking about that. People are like, oh, cold plunge, oh, morning routines, 5 a.m. But it's like bigger than that. It's just don't be a dick to yourself. Like, treat yourself like somebody that you love and you care about, because that will drastically impact how you show up at work, how you show up with your family, how you show up with your friends. A lot of the resentments that we have of other people treating us improperly are because we're also treating ourselves improperly in the very same way, but it's easier to project on what the other people are doing and make it an external thing rather than look at ourselves and be like, oh, I'm kind of being a dick to me too. Maybe I should stop that, right?
Totally.
And I think that is kind of the biggest thing that I could share with people is whether you want to acquire businesses or not, whether you want to build empires or not, learning how to be strategically selfish enough to treat yourself really, really well in order to be able to do the things that you're capable of is kind of step one. And that's something that anybody, regardless of how much access to capital or opportunity or whatever situation they're in, can do today. Is they can make a decision that I am going to treat myself like somebody that I actually love, even if that means that I have to have the hard conversations with myself and be like, hey, maybe we can take better care of ourselves.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Beki. Thank you for sharing your time, your expertise, your insights, where you're going. This has been really cool. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Don't forget to be selfish. It's okay. Be nice to yourself. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Till next time, thank you from True Experts. Bye, Beki.
Bye. Thank you for having me.